Still talking about Freud. Now we're going to talk about Freud's 5 psychosexual stages of development. Now, one thing we definitely have to give credit to Freud for is, in addition to getting therapy started, essentially, he gave us a developmental stage theory. This is the beginnings of somewhat of a long tradition of explaining children's development, children and adolescents, and even adults' development in some cases, in terms of stage-like development. So with Freud, it is kind of important to warn students that there are some controversies about the specifics of what he said, what he proposed about the stages, and some of the terminology makes students giggle and things like that. I mean, right off the bat, they're called the psychosexual stages of development. So some students are like, what? We're talking about psychosex? What's going on here? All right, so the word sexual is in there. There's the opportunity for students to start laughing. And some of the names, like their stage is called the oral stage, the anal stage. And sometimes students will hear things I don't actually say in class. So I'm trying to give you a little heads up, a little warning. Folks, sometimes it's more boring than you might think it is. Other times, it is a little bizarre, the specifics of what he proposed. So let's get into it. So there were 5 stages, 5 psychosexual stages. 4 out of the 5 stages had something called an erogenous zone. An erogenous zone is sort of a part of the body that is a focus of sexual pleasure. What do we mean by sexual pleasure? Because you, as a person living in modern times in the United States, you might think something completely different for sexual pleasure than Freud might have. Freud would probably be more general than you would. Sexual pleasure, just think bodily pleasure, something that makes the body feel good. Not necessarily something leading to sexual orgasm. All right, so let's keep that in mind. So, erogenous zone, a center, a focus for bodily pleasure. So, let's start. His first stage, which goes along with infancy, early toddlerhood, that would be the oral stage. The oral stage, can you guess what the erogenous zone would be? Yep, it's the mouth. All right, so what do we mean by the mouth is an erogenous zone? The infant and toddler, they get pleasure with that mouth. What kind of pleasure can they get? Feeding. That is a big one. Getting your feeding needs met, your comfort and your nourishment from breastfeeding or bottle feeding. And then also, infants get to chew and play with objects and explore objects with their mouth. They engage in oral exploration or mouthing. You put something near an infant, they're going to put it in their mouth. If they can, they're going to get it in their mouth. That's how they explore the world. And so this behavior of getting pleasure through the mouth is what we see during the oral stage. Now, each stage also has a conflict. The conflict for this stage is weaning. Now, for my in-person class, I learned today that most of them didn't know what that word means. All right, I know, as someone who once had to wean two babies, I know that word, but that is when you go from being breastfed or bottle fed and then you move to giving that up and then you're doing solid food, all right, or what we might think of as traditional eating. All right, so that can go poorly or it can go badly, this weaning. And Freud, he's kind of known for beginning a long tradition in psychiatry and psychology of mother blaming, saying, hey, if things don't go well, it's something the mom did, something a caregiver did. So if the mother was inconsistent in meeting the child's needs, like feeding them, if they frustrated them, if they didn't feed them when they were hungry or fed them when they weren't hungry, these sort of experiences can lead to problems with weaning. All right, so if you don't wean successfully, you can become fixated. Freud believed in fixation. Fixation is like getting stuck in an earlier stage. You are still functioning like somebody in that stage. So if you become orally fixated, you are still behaving like an infant in the sense that you are still getting sexual pleasure through the mouth, still getting pleasure through activities involving the mouth. And this includes a wide range of activities. This includes things like chewing on your nails, chewing on pens and pencils when you're nervous, eating a lot, talking a lot. being very sarcastic, playing a musical instrument that involves the mouth, being a singer for a living, being a teacher for a living that involves a lot of talking, being a comedian, something like that. Those all involve the mouth. Also, substance use can also be something that would be considered a sign of oral fixation, and smoking would be a sign of oral fixation, which is interesting because Freud himself was a huge cigar smoker. In fact, he died after getting jaw cancer, probably related to his cigar smoking, but he still smoked even after that happened. So Freud, by his own descriptions, would be considered probably orally fixated. All right. So that is the first stage. The oral stage is the first of the psychosexual stages. Since this would be a really long video, if I tried to cram them all into one video, in the next video, I'm going to start with the anal stage. Yes, folks, people giggle when I say that name in class. I'm hoping you can keep yourself together when we learn about the anal stage of psychosexual development.